If you're in a coveted area, it's always going to be a landlord heavy market. The best thing that you can do is have that DSO mindset and jump when you see an opportunity. Don't worry about $5 here in TIs or a nickel here in a rate. That's not the way that you evaluate a business. Don't look for that dream space. The business opportunity is much more important than floor to ceiling windows and all of this other stuff. Why do some dentists have 20 practices and some can never get off the ground with one? And they're in the same class or a class above, a class below. And it's all mindset. If you want to start a practice and you're a very introverted personality, go hire a rock star team to support you. We do not bring in a contractor on the first visit. We don't bring anybody else in. We don't bring the contractor in on the second visit or the third visit. Well, why is that? Don't we need to have them look at it?
Hello and welcome back to Ali Off the Record. I'm your host, Ali Oromchian, and today's guest is someone who's redefining the way healthcare professionals approach commercial real estate. Joining me is Brian Mills, the founder of Rome Commercial Realty, and with over 20 years of experience in healthcare, Brian has mastered the art of negotiations, always putting his clients' dreams first and making the impossible happen. His nationwide network of top producing healthcare real estate experts help doctors start new practices, purchase buildings, and expand with confidence. And in this episode, we're going to explore how Brian flips the script on traditional real estate, removes limitations, and helps turn big visions into thriving practices. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this episode as it's filled with gold nuggets on things that you need to think about as you're starting this journey into opening up your own office. All right. Welcome, everyone. And Brian, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Thank you, sir. I got a little secret just to start off with. This is not my natural hair color. And if you hear kids running in the background, I think it's the last week of summer. If you hear a dog barking, just deal with it, man. You can edit all that out later.
No worries, man. No worries. I know it's well, you're in Southern California. You got to have the beach blonde hair and all of that. So well, listen, dude. Welcome to the podcast. I know you and I have gone back for 20 some years, but you've just gone into this real estate brokerage world. I think the last maybe 8 years, 10 years, maybe it's been now,
but a decade plus actually.
What is it? How long?
Decade plus, over 10 years. Wow. Time flies, yeah.
Dude, time's flying. So tell us kind of how you started in healthcare and then what got you motivated to make the switch and become a commercial broker.
Yeah, I was a young guy in college. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I thought I was going to be on Saturday Night Live or something like every other 18 and a half year old. And I stumbled into the dental industry just literally through dumb luck. And I started selling Cyrax in Texas when people were like, what the heck is that? And that was about 25 years ago. From there, I started a consulting company with a couple mentors and friends of mine, and we ran that up to a national consulting company, did really well with it. And then I got into capital equipment sales. And I always saw a couple people at the table. There was always a contractor. There was always a lender. There was always an attorney. And most of the time there was a real estate person. And I kept referring all my deals to these real estate people, and not to besmirch anybody's name, but I just didn't feel like the real estate people were doing that great of a job. And so I thought, hey, maybe there's something to this. I'm looking to start another business. I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And so, over a decade ago, I got into real estate and found out the hard way. The reason that there's not a lot of people that are into this is because it's challenging. The math on the West Coast and the East Coast is very difficult. You don't get much of a pass versus the Midwest in terms of how they underwrite deals. So a lot of things going into the real estate aspect of it.
Yeah. And I'm going to get into those details with you because, when I started my career, which it's crazy to think that you've been doing real estate for 10 years, but we are about to celebrate our 20-year anniversary next year, which to me is crazy to think that the law firm has been doing this for the past 20 years. But when I first started, It was like a 75-25% split, meaning 75% of our doctors did new offices, right? Ground up, startups, whatnot. Only 25% did practice acquisitions. Today, that has totally flipped, and we see way more acquisitions than startups. And so I want to get into those nitty-gritty details with you because there's a lot there that we're gonna hammer out. And there's things that I think people are gonna hear that's gonna blow their mind that they're not gonna expect to hear because usually it's you and me talking in front of a room and that it's a little bit different. But I want to just start high level for a second. You see a lot of trends, right? Like a lot of trends across different things. And I want to start with the real estate trends for now. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the doctors themselves. But what are you seeing as far as real estate trends that someone who maybe wants to do a startup is tired of looking for that perfect office that they can't find? What do they need to know on the real estate side as far as trends is concerned?
The number one thing is if you try to time the market, you're always going to lose. When COVID happened, I remember people saying, "Oh, just wait. The deals are going to be astronomical. They're going to be like exponentially greater than what they were." None of that came to fruition. So people always try to sit on the sideline and say, "Well, if I wait another 6 months, the interest rates are going to come down, or we have a new president and the market's going to tumble and I'm going to take advantage of it." It doesn't work like that. I mean, if you're always waiting for that perfect time, whether it's personal, professional, etc., you're going to be sitting on the sideline and you'll be that same guy, same girl at the meeting saying the same thing for the next 5 years. And that's what makes people great associates, is because there's never a perfect time. If you're in a coveted area, it's always going to be a landlord heavy market. The best thing that you can do is have that DSO mindset and jump when you see an opportunity. Don't worry about $5 here in TIs or a nickel here in a rate. That's not the way that you evaluate a business. So, I'm glad what you said about acquisitions versus startups. It's weird. It's like a rumor starts in a back room and then all of a sudden it spreads like wildfire across the country. You never know how these things start. When I started in the dental business 25 years ago, we did tons of startups and tons of transitions and not necessarily acquisitions. And all of a sudden, for no rhyme or reason, it sort of flipped over and people can't figure out why. But the trends in real estate are, don't sit on the sideline and don't look for that dream space. The business opportunity is much more important than floor to ceiling windows and all of this other stuff. That doesn't make you money at the end of the day. That's important. And we can, dentistry is hard. We want you to be inspired when you go to work, but it doesn't have to have a fireman's pole in the middle of it for you to pull the trigger on something. So, stop waiting for everything to be aligned.
Yeah. Well, if you're in Reno, maybe you do have a fireman's pole, but in most other places, no. Yeah. All right. No, but, I love Reno. No, here's the thing. Here's, I think what, I think this is what you're saying. And I want people to really hear this again, because it is a really valid point. And I'll give you a very personal example of this. When my wife did her first office almost, 16 years ago, actually, the price per square foot to build her office was, I think it was $97 a square foot to build out her practice, her pedo practice. Then about 8 years later, she had to move the office because she has outgrown it. So we had to go to the building next door and build out a much larger space. That ended up being like $130 a square foot, right? And I was like, holy cow, that's like 50% more. That's a crazy increase in just like 7 short years. We have doctors now, and this is not like, we're not talking Seattle, San Francisco. Like, this is almost across the country where they're paying anywhere from $175 to $250 a square foot just to build it out, like no equipment, nothing, just to do construction, which, Brian, I mean, to your point, if somebody waited from COVID, which was 5 years ago, to now, that price per square foot has gone up significantly, but then the rental prices may not have changed all that much, or maybe have gone down a little bit, maybe gone up a little bit. I mean, the numbers are just not there. So I think you're right. Like waiting is not a great idea. Are those numbers what you're seeing cross country too?
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, I grew up in the Midwest. I'm a Oklahoma kid from a small town, and I still have a team in the Midwest. My sister and her business partner are there, and prices there are, if you want to build a nice office, not something opulent. I mean, you're talking $200 a square foot. So I think the best way to evaluate this whole process is what's the value of time lost. If you're an associate in California and you're a good associate, you're probably taking home 20% of what you produce. If you're an absolute rock star, maybe you're pushing 25% of what your production is. If you're an owner, the gold standard is you should be getting as close as possible to 40% take home. What is that difference over a 5-year span? So the value of time loss as you try to time out the market, as you look for a practice for 5 years that never presents itself. So, on a spreadsheet, that's a huge number if you look at it that way.
Yeah. And for those of you that are listening, these numbers, there's sort of a plus or minus delta here, depending on what kind of office you're doing, right? If you're doing, a med spa, it's going to be a little bit less in terms of construction because you don't have as many sinks and things of that nature. If you're doing an optometry practice, it actually is probably going to be about the same, even though you don't have a lot of sinks and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot more design that comes in, especially on the optical side. Same thing on, if you're doing a vet hospital or whatnot. But these numbers are very accurate. What you want to focus on is the trend line, is what is I think Brian's point, and I think that's exactly right. Brian, let's switch to the doctors a little bit now. The psychology has changed actually for the better since COVID, because we are seeing more people interested in opening up their own offices because they've realized, hey, that perfect practice may not be available for them to buy or may never become available, right? Like if they want to be in, downtown Dallas or in the suburbs of Dallas, that may never come available. If they want to be in, in the Bay Area or in, the outskirts of Seattle, it may never come. So what are you seeing psychologically with the doctors that are coming to you now looking to do startups? What's changed with them from before? And what's encouraging about that, and what would you want to talk about?
My favorite topic is mindset, actually, and we have spoken, you and I, a ton across the country, and people are like, okay, the real estate guy, and then if I have an hour, I talk like 2 minutes about real estate. I talk more about mindset, and whether you're, a dentist, a physician, a med spa owner, etc. What I love about my business is the delta between the haves and the have-nots is mind-blowing. I mean, it's huge. Let's focus on dentists. Why do some dentists have 20 practices and some can never get off the ground with one? And they're in the same class or a class above, a class below. And it's all mindset. There's no, people are very jaded, unfortunately, and they'll say, well, they've got this secret pile of money or a trust fund or this or that. I can tell you that's not true. The classmate or your lab bench partner, sometimes they have a much humbler beginning than you did. I'll talk about, somebody, I hope she doesn't mind, Mary Pham. She's very open with this. She was like, listen, I worked at Hooters in college and now I own 20 something practices, and she's known across the country, and it's all up here. That's the only thing that holds you back is you gotta have a little bit of crazy in you to go out there and start one. And you find, and you see this all the time, and probably with your wife as well, once you start one and you have that taste of success, all of a sudden, that story that you told me in the beginning about, hey, I just want to have one practice and that's all I'm looking for. And then a year and a half later, you're like, I think I might want to do another one. I think I have this figured out. So the jump from 1 to 2 is hard. 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, it's like rinse and repeat. People really figure out that system. And now it seems like they're pushing that boulder downhill. So,
Yeah.
that's what's very interesting about our business is the people that get off the ground and have that success, they start to do it over and over and over again because there's so much room for opportunity and growth. And then those that just cannot get over that fear hurdle, again, that's what keeps you as a captive, great associate or employee for somebody out there.
Yeah. That's, I think mindset is spot on. I mean, I think knowing that, having the mindset that you are as smart and as capable as everyone else out there, and having the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it and I'm going to work hard to make sure it's successful, I think is a big part of that mindset. Just as you said, I think a lot of people sometimes see, clients, you brought up Mary Pham, who's like an incredible person. She's grown to these number of offices, but she didn't do it day one, right? She started, she was, I'm sure, associating, and then she made the decision to do it on her own, and then went through some lumps and humps and all that stuff, and then was like, wow, okay, I figured it out now. Maybe I do number two. And for those of you, by the way, who are out there, we're not in any way saying you guys should own 5, 10, 20 offices. There are plenty of clients that we have that have $3, $4, $5 million offices, or even $1 million offices. They have one, but they are super efficient. They're super strong, and they don't need to go bigger. And that's okay too. I think the idea is, not staying as an associate necessarily if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, right? And I think that's the key.
Well, one thing that I always tell everybody is, number one, and I get very enthusiastic, and I get on, when I have an opportunity to speak, I'm screaming, and, I've been doing this 25 years. Every day is like the first day. I'm very enthusiastic. I'm an entrepreneur. Ali, you're an entrepreneur. We like to see other people do well and not be held back. But the first and the last thing that I tell everybody is, hey, you're not a loser. You're not less than if you don't go open a practice. The physician mindset is typically, I'm going to go clock in and clock out every day, and I'm going to be a great employee. There's nothing wrong with that. You're still in the top, 1%. If you're a physician, a dentist, a veterinarian, etc., right, you still achieve something great that most people have not or could not. So again, it doesn't make you less than. If thinking about starting up your practice just makes you want to throw up every time you say it, don't do it. It's cool. Nobody here is pushing you to do it. But I will say, looking back on regret, that's a pain that you never get over. I could have, I wish I would have. That's something that will eat you up inside. So this endeavor that you're embarking on, the cool thing is it has almost 100% success rate. So it's not like you're opening up, a restaurant or a hair salon. I mean, the failure rate is almost zero. You have to do something pretty wild to fail in any of these industries. But if you're not cut out for it, that's great. And the cool thing is you don't have to be a gregarious loudmouth like me. You can hire for those people. If you look at if you look at every DSO, the doctor is in what position? Number 2 or number 3. The office manager and the treatment coordinator are 1 and 2, and the doctor is probably 3 in those things. So if you want to start a practice and you're a very introverted personality, go hire a rock star team to support you.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up hairstylist, because I think your hairstylist is going back to RDA school after what she did to your head. But that's a whole different story.
Let me tell you something real quick. When I did this, my 13-year-old was like, "Hey, let's buzz our hair and bleach it. It'll really piss mom off." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." Then I do mine, and what does he do? He goes, "I don't want to do mine anymore."
Yeah, I know. I got to go back to school. I'm not doing it, Dad.
And then you go to Sally's Beauties and you start asking for these girls that are working there, like, "Hey, can I bleach my hair again?" They're like, "Yeah, why not?" And I'm like, "Well, you have a bald patch right here." Go for it.
Oh man. All right. Okay. So, I'm glad you brought up that this whole 100% success rate in healthcare, because we hear this a lot, right? We hear this a lot from all the major banks, that they have a 99% success rate, and so on and so forth.
Total bullshit.
I think they say like less than 1% all fail. But to me, and you've seen me say this from the front of the room all the time, I think that's a disservice to the doctors, because even though 1% or less than 1% might fail, a lot more suffer
That's
through the whole experience.
very
And
good
if they're
point.
suffering through it, then that's terrible as well, because that's extra pressure on their families. It's the extra pressure, on themselves, on their finances, all of it. So
I
let's
would
start with
classify that as a failure, right? If you're making less money as an owner than you were as an associate, if you're less
Yeah.
happy as an owner than you were as an associate, and that's something that, we don't quantify, we don't put it in the spreadsheet, but I would agree. That's the first time we've ever talked about that. That is a failure to me. If you open up and you're just miserable and you can't do it, something has gone wrong in those systems, and that's a failure to me. So yeah, if you look at that, the failure rate is probably higher than that 99.6 or 7, but that's also the people who I think didn't surround themselves with the right kind of team, unfortunately.
Well, exactly. And so let's start with that. So from your perspective on the real estate side, what's one of the biggest mistakes? And you can give me a couple if that comes to mind, but what are the top mistakes or the top mistake that someone can make when they're starting down this road of opening up a new office?
Thinking about overhead more than production.
Okay.
Nobody gets an award for doing the cheapest startup. I am very frugal. I tell everybody, hey, if I wouldn't spend my money on it, I'm not going to advise that you do it. Now, I'm a little bit risky. I just bought $20,000 worth of GameStop the other day because I'm like, it's gonna do something again really big. So I'm a little bit nutty in terms of how I invest my dollars sometimes, but I'm very sophisticated and very careful when it comes to business decisions when you have this much stuff on the line. But if you try to save your way into success, it will never happen. The patients will know you're not going to reach the level of patience and clientele that you need to. You have to think about investing where you need to, meaning marketing, your build out. When you're a young dentist and you're starting out, you have nothing to show. What are you going to do? Show your crown prep? You're going to make people sick.
Right.
You have to be able to look at your background. It's beautiful. You have to be able to show your practice, and you can't show how great of a clinician you are. Yes, you can show your cosmetic work, etc. But ultimately, people are going to judge you by what does your space look like? What does your branding look like? I'm so tired of people on Facebook groups and etc. saying, "Oh, I built my own website." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, we can all tell."
Yeah.
Even if you did a great job, your SEO is crap. You're not reaching who you need to reach. So constantly thinking about how do I keep my cost as low as possible is not a great way to have $1 million practice. There's a great balance in between the two. It's my job to fight for those dollars, and I'm very proud of myself and my team. We fight for every single penny of as if it's our own, but you can't cheapen out when it comes to the build out, to your marketing, all those other things, because patients will realize and you're going to suffer.
Yeah. What about location, Brian? Like fixating on being sort of a retail space, strip mall type thing versus a medical dental building, and I want you to talk about it not just for different kinds of doctors, right? Like if what do you see important for an optometrist? What's important for a vet hospital, a dentist? Like what have you seen? And because I hear people focus on that a lot. So tell us a little bit about that.
There's a right answer for every single one of those. People have blinders on, and every industry thinks, oh, I've got to be in the biggest, baddest, most sexiest, freestanding retail with blinking lights. Guess what? Nobody is paying attention. Look over at the driver next to you. If they're in a Tesla, they're probably watching a movie. If they're in another car, they're probably doing like this the whole time. No, right. I always, I love to meet new clients face to face because it's important to me and it should be important to them. And I challenge them. I say, name 2 businesses that you passed on your way here. And they're like, I'm sure there was, a Starbucks somewhere. I'm like, you can't. You're moving at such a fast clip in today's world. You have no idea what's zooming past you. So your location is important, but it's not a deal breaker. If you're a veterinarian and you're not a specialist, being in a retail setting is important. But what's more important is a dedicated parking field. So somebody doesn't have to carry in their 70-pound golden retriever through a myriad of cars, etc. A relief area is a must if you're a veterinarian. If you're a vet specialist, it doesn't really matter. Go into a very nice flex area. It's a referral-based business. It doesn't really matter. If you're a dentist and you're focusing on more of a Medicare, Medi-Cal area, sometimes retail does help. But it's not an end-all, be-all. If you are a high-end med spa, cosmetic dentist, etc., if your clientele is college educated or they have means and a disposable income, then you'd be better served if you went into a professional medical building, because you're going to have more of a cachet, and nobody wants to walk out after having, a laser facial or, a full set of veneers and walk through a retail parking lot, and see their friend. So there is a right location for everybody, but the best location is the one that provides the best business opportunity. And that's where these corporate entities really flourish is, yes, if they can have signage, they'll tackle it. But for them, they want to be the first and they want to box out their competition. So you'll find a corporate dental group, a corporate med spa. They will go into a professional medical building with no signage whatsoever if they can be the first and box out their competition. That's much more important than having a monument sign or something else. So
I love that.
Don't think that you have to spin through the nose to have, this corner pad building. Because if you go into a professional medical building, it may serve your clientele better, and the deal we could do could be exponentially greater. And imagine what I could do for your practice if I saved you $300,000 in build out money and lease negotiations. Yeah. If you had an extra $300,000 and you poured that into your marketing spend, imagine how many patients would come in versus seeing your sign as a walk by. A walk by patient is not a great patient typically.
Yeah, and you don't even need to spend 300,000. Just spend 100,000.
100, yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. So part of that though, Brian, starts with the vision, right? And that word has been a little bit overused by consultants and others, right? Everyone's like, "Oh, what's your vision? And what's your vision?" And and that's hard, right? For someone to put that into words. So it sounds to me like when you're having these initial discussions with these doctors, you're actually having that discussion with them of how they're imagining their practice being. And so how do you help them kind of clarify that mission with you, as they start this process?
Well, you're right. That's too big of a grandiose, like, hey, what's your vision? That's too broad of a stroke. You ask somebody what their vision is and they're like, okay, what? So I narrow it down and I say, if you think about, and I say, first of all, purge your mind of the way you're working right now. That's the hardest thing because people come from a background that they've been working in for 5 years and that's all they know. And I say, okay, the first thing you have to do is clear your mind of how you're working right now. Think about who is sitting in your chair. Do they look like you? Do they look like me? What kind of patients do you like to work on? And then people usually say, aha, I like to work on an underserved market. I like to work on kids who've never had a great experience. I like to do cosmetic dentistry. I like to do very medical, clinical optometry. So when you narrow the scope down, people typically will immediately answer that question. Oh, here's the kind of patients that I enjoy, right? Yeah. They know the patients that they don't want to work with. Right. So that's the first thing I ask them is who is sitting in your chair? From there, then we can narrow down the location because the demographics are at our disposal. I pay through the nose to have access to the highest demographics. So if you tell me who's sitting in the chair, I can narrow that down and then the space follows that. So who's sitting in the chair?
I love that.
What the demographic is, and then we pull along the space to match that demographic.
Oh, I love that. I love that a lot, actually. I never thought about it in terms of those words, but you're right. I mean, from that perspective, like who are you going to cater to? Yeah. And walk backwards from there. And, you said something earlier about the veterinarian having to walk in with their, 70-pound dog or whatnot. And you're exactly right, because I've done that actually. We love our veterinarian, but the shopping center is so busy that I've had to park and then literally carry him in. And not that I can't do it because I work out. No, but it's just hard. You know what I mean? It's like it's just a hard experience. But I will tell you, I think those are the little things that make a huge difference for a customer base, for patients, whatnot, to be able to
it sets the tone. It sets
those little
tone.
Things. Yeah. It shows that they've thought about it, right? They've thought about it.
People will find you. That's not the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
Well, again, we're all looking at this mind control device. You can tell Facebook and Instagram exactly who to target, but when they get there, what is the experience like? And if they have to navigate through this myriad of parking garages and et cetera, if they have to carry in their sick animal, if they have a double bob stroller and a sick baby and they're navigating, it sets the tone, and it's really hard to recover from that from the clinician's perspective.
Yeah. So Brian, let's say they've identified a space now and they've chosen you as their broker. So you guys are walking them through the space. Who else do you want walking the space with you? You got the doctor, you got their spouse maybe, and then there's you and your team. Is there someone else you want there?
It's funny that you ask that, because I'm so calculated in this. And this is where our brain works differently than everybody else is. Where attorneys are looking at, okay, what does the verbiage say and what is the possible detriment to you as the client? As a broker, I'm always thinking like this is a poker hand and everything is a bluff, right? So I'm always thinking about posture. You're thinking about leverage and how does this affect and what are the repercussions?
Sure.
I'm thinking about the optics. How is somebody viewing what we're doing right now? So yes, bring your spouse. That's very important at some point, or take pictures if you can't both be there. Getting two working doctors on the same schedule, if the spouse is also a clinician or has their own business, et cetera, is almost impossible. So, but your spouse, your partner needs to be a part of that. But we do not bring in a contractor on the first visit. We don't bring anybody else in. We don't bring the contractor in on the second visit or the third visit. Well, why is that? Don't we need to have them look at it? 25 years, I can tell you if this will work or not. So I'm not worried about that. But if we go a round of negotiations and I don't see what I'm liking in that first round or even the second round, it's not until we get very, very close that I want to start to bring in a team. Because why is that? Think about the optics from the landlord's perspective. Well, we just sent our first round and it's not great. But the broker immediately called back and said, now I want to tour with my architect and my contractor and my consultant and my designer. You just, here's my hand. I just showed you. I have nothing. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And they're going, oh, they must really like that because they just scheduled 5 people to walk the space.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I don't want to schedule any more visits whatsoever. And I may just go completely dark and wait for that listing broker or the landlord's agent to chase me and say, hey, where are we at on this deal? Ah, great. Now they're chasing us. It's not until we get very, very close that I want to bring in a team because I don't want to tip my hand to anybody. So on those initial visits, we don't bring in anybody. But if you're serious about this process and you're committed to it, it's never too early to start interviewing contractor, coach, designer, your attorney, etc. So you can be doing all that stuff behind the scenes. We just don't want to tip our hand and bring them in too early in that process.
No, I love that. And you've heard me tell you and others that I think you yourself are probably the top negotiator for leases that I've ever met because of what I see you do for clients. I've seen you get $60, $70, $80 a square foot from landlords, free rent up the wazoo. Like, you've done some things that I think is really rare in the market like this, especially in a market where, it's very landlord friendly. And so of course you can't do that on every deal, but I've seen your magic at work, and it's great to hear. It's like these little things that you're doing that makes a big difference because you're right. I mean, I didn't think about it that way. Like the way you position with a landlord up front with the LOI makes all the difference. Yeah, it's not as efficient because you don't have the designer, you don't have the, the reps there, all this. You have to keep going back, but you get a better deal down the road.
We're not rushing to get a deal done. The deal is done when we've maxed out every single concession that we have. And I remember I did a deal in a building, Newport, and we got $200 a square foot in TIs. And simultaneously, we lowered the lease rate significantly and got free rent, like you said, up the wazoo. I have a lot of brokers that I'm friendly with, and one of them called me and said, "Hey, Brian, I know you did a deal in this building. I was going to go in and push really hard. Do you think that $50 a square foot is too much?" And I just said, "I just did $200 a square foot." They were blown away. So I said, "Hey, go do your thing. Here's the deal that we did." But you have to understand where you can push and what levers to pull. And I know that sounds super silly, to say like, "Hey, don't bring in a contractor." That little small nuance right there, that little small thing, that could save you $100,000 in concessions. So again, we don't care about waiting a week or 2 weeks, because some of these things you have to pause, you have to reset. And that's why it's so important that tenants not drive around and call on signs, because everything you're doing, imagine you're there with your poker hand, and that professional poker player is looking for every tick and twitch. You may say the smallest thing, and that may clam up the negotiation. So I know for somebody looking at the outside, they're like, "Oh, that sounds silly." But when you hear me say it, you're like, "That sounds very true." Yeah. So you have to be very careful with your posture.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And I think for those of you that are listening, some people will say, well, Brian only gets paid, if he gets a deal done.
Yeah.
So he's gonna rush us through this thing. And I think what you've heard from him, and this is not necessarily true of all brokers, but I think especially the ones that are in healthcare, that are like Brian, that are specialists, they're not pushing you to a deal. They're showing you a couple of places, making sure you have an incredible, posture in terms of your negotiations. And then when it's the right deal comes together, and of course they get, paid and so on and so forth. So because I get that question a lot, and it's always, having known you for so many years, I know how long, you take to get a deal done when you're going back and forth. And I think you just summarized it perfectly. So
there's an inherent conflict of interest in almost everything, especially what I do. Like you said, we get paid by the landlord, we get paid by the seller. And I always challenge our clients, like, "Hey, they're ready to hang up the call. They're excited." And I'm like, "Time out. You didn't ask me the magic question. How do I get paid? What do my services cost?" You can't just hang up this phone call without asking me, "Well, what's the price tag?" We get paid by the landlord. And if you're not going to ask me that, I'm going to insert that question for you because it's important. And a lot of doctors are sophisticated. A lot of business owners will ask me, "Well, Brian, isn't that a conflict of interest?" Absolutely it is. And there's bad brokers out there. There's bad attorneys. There's bad CPAs. Just because somebody uses this fancy word and says they're fiduciary, that doesn't mean that they're protecting you necessarily. They're legally required to do, but I call it commission breath. Real estate's really hard. There's a lot of new agents out there who've never closed a deal before, and you're going to feel that. But I always put it back on our clients and I say, "How do I know I need a crown on number 19? How do I know this mole is cancerous here? Aren't you profiting off of this? If I don't trust you, it's never going to work. If you don't trust me, it's never going to work." So there's no magic answer other than you have to wake up every day and feel like I'm working my ass off for every single point as if it's my own, or it's not going to work. And the second that you don't feel that, you either need to bring that up or you need to move on from that relationship.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So it's all based on trust.
I love that. All right. So let's transition to some questions. This is the Ask Ali segment. This is where we've asked our clients and the audience, from previous, podcasts to send us their questions because we know we're going to do this topic. So here's a couple that I've got for you. So you ready for these?
I'm ready.
So Brian, here's the question. It says, "Ali, the lease for my new dental office seemed pretty straightforward, so I didn't think I needed a lawyer or an agent to guide me. I signed it on my own, but now that I'm moving forward with the build out, I'm running into all these little surprises. like no tenant improvement allowance, restrictions on assignment and subletting, and even an ADA parking and zoning requirement, which I didn't know about. Is there anything I can do now, or am I stuck with what I signed? Yeah.
Sorry, I just got sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually feel bad. We run into these doctors all the time, and I'll be at, CDA, Chicago, ADA somewhere, and I'll run into somebody and they'll say, "Oh, I just opened my practice, but I got a good deal." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. Like, how much free rent did you get?" "Well, I got a 6 months, free rent." I'm like, "That's awesome. Did you get any free rent after the build out?" They're like, "No." "Did you get any TI allowance?" "I got this. It should have been triple. The ADA clause, the assignment language, the casualty language, the exclusivity language, all these things." Yeah. I mean, you can find yourself completely upside down. There's so many things that I could go through that will trip you up, that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you don't have a clause in there that says that the landlord is to take care of all the ADA upgrades that may be triggered outside of your space by your TI permit, you are absolutely screwed. You may have just spent your entire startup budget on ADA improvements. Just to put in a properly done ramp could cost you $100,000. So I don't even know where to start or end on that question. There's so many things in there. I mean, you taught me years and years ago that if something is capitalized in a lease, it means something completely different than if it's not. So yes, these documents seem very straightforward, and the listing broker and the landlord's going to say, "Hey, this is a standard lease. Don't worry about it." Right?
Right.
If you sign that and you miss a period or a dotted I or something else, you may never be able to sell your practice, or you may blow through your entire TI budget. So you have to be extremely careful. If you do not have an attorney, I will not work with you. If we get all the way to the end of a lease and it's a screaming deal and you say, "Hey, I'm just not going to use an attorney," I'll say, "Take my name off of that deal, because I want zero part of it." Literally, it's way too dangerous. And what I do, you have to think of like myself and Ali, or your broker and your attorney, as like the starting act and then the main performer. I'm like the Yakov Smirnoff and you're like the Eddie Murphy. If I don't get sorry for anybody under 40 who doesn't know Yakov.
Yeah, exactly.
If I don't get the crowd laughing in the beginning, there's no way that Ali can come in and close it out properly. So there's a lot of things that your broker should understand about the legal process that they do up front before you start to spend money on your attorney. Because if I negotiate 3 business points and say, "Hey, Ali, I got free rent and TI and, one other point here, you go for it." And now Ali steps in and he's like, "Well, what about the assignment language? Did you even talk about that?" And the landlord's going to say, "We're not even close." "What about the ADA language? Did you even talk about that?" "We're not even close." And so now Ali is pushing this endless boulder uphill, and there's no way that anybody's going to win.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that statement you made where landlords say, "Oh, this is a standard lease. No one's ever negotiated it. Everyone just signs it." Anytime someone gives a qualifier like that, for everyone listening, if anybody ever says anything close to that, like it's a standard lease, or, no one's ever reviewed it, or, all this kind of nonsense, you just know there's going to be a lot of nonsense.
There is no standard lease. Why does the AIR lease, which is the industry standard, why does it change every 6 months? If it's the standard, why does it continue to change? There is no standard lease. So please do not sign a document thinking it's a standard lease.
Yeah. And to our earlier point too, because there's so much money at stake. I mean, remember, this is your second biggest investment that you will ever make after your home. Right. And so as a result, there's some big dollars at stake. And so if you don't have a good lease, to Brian's point, it could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road. It could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars today, which, is less money in your pocket. Again, it impacts how much wealth you're about to build. It impacts how much you can reinvest back in the business in terms of marketing and other things and growth. I mean, it impacts all these things. So again, remember, less than 1% of practices fail, but a lot more suffer.
Yeah.
And the way we minimize that suffrage is by making sure the LOI that Brian is negotiating is strong, and then the lease is strong. So I think that's great. Okay. I got a second question, and this one is, I think, so apropos because so many unexperienced brokers, lawyers ignore this question and ignore this situation. And I want you to talk about it, Brian, and I'm glad this person asked this question because I see it all the time. It says, "Hey, Ali, I negotiated what I thought was a great lease with a generous tenant improvement allowance and several months of free rent while the space is being built out. But construction delays," and I'm going to actually add something to this. I'm going to say construction delays and permitting delays, okay, "are pushing my opening date back, and now my free rent period will expire before I can even open the doors," right? What do I do? I'm lost. So Brian, let's talk about the permitting side first before the construction side, because that's the part that I see still, even 5 years after COVID, still be an issue. So can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, COVID completely flipped the cities upside down, and it hasn't recovered from that yet. So before pre-COVID, we will always say, hey, you can build out even the most extreme surgery center in probably 6 months with permitting. If you're experienced in the market, you all know those cities, those municipalities where, hey, this takes a little bit longer, it's a little bit faster, but COVID flipped everything up. And I think what it did was kind of gave the cities a reason to outsource stuff or a reason to be slow or whatever. I'm not really sure.
Right.
But what we started doing, probably even before that was, the permitting is open-ended. You have no idea how long it's going to take. It also depends on your contractor, your designer, your architect, what you're building. So our gold standard is we try to leave the permitting process open-ended. So we say, hey, we know how long a qualified contractor takes to physically construct a space. Once they go in there and actually start swinging a hammer, how long does it take? So we try to say, okay, give us, let's just say, 5 months from receipt of permits. And the permit part is open-ended. And believe it or not, if a landlord is experienced and they know you and they've done deals with you, they understand that, yeah, Brian's right. We don't know how long the permitting process is going to take. So this is a 25-year relationship. Let's make sure that we get it off the ground appropriately. And let's grant that. That's not easy to do. Don't get me wrong. We don't get this on every deal, but we get it on a large part. And you should at least set the table by trying and saying, we want a physical construction period after receipt of permits. The receipt of permit period is open-ended. It's going to take as long as it's going to take. Now, the landlord will probably come back and say, okay, but we need some timelines. You need to show me that you've done your initial plans within 30 days. You've submitted for permits within 60 days, etc. And some of that keeps your contractor accountable too, because even the best contractor slips up sometime. I have one of my greatest friends who does a great job, but right now he's made some mistakes. And you're looking at his work and the landlord's saying, well, why did it take 6 months just to submit for permits on this TI plan? That's the contractor's mistake. So having that checks and balances helps, but if you can have an open-ended permit, then followed by a physical construction period is a huge help. Or have a one-for-one. Say, if the city delays the permit process, every day that they delay us, we get a delay. Or every day that the landlord's delivery delays us, we get an extra day. So it's called a one-for-one delay.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that. And I think the biggest culprit is, like you said, is the counties, is the cities. And sometimes landlords will give, a crazy amount of free rent. They'll give you 12 months to do your whole construction because they don't want to deal with the permitting, and that's fine. But like to your point, you need to move quickly on getting stuff done through engineering, through mechanical, through the city, so it takes time. Okay.
Our job is to guide you through all that too. You don't just wait until you sign the lease and say, hey, now let's start designing this space, because that's all free, period. Once we look like there's a deal we're going to consummate, we start to spend time and money on designing that. So before the lease is signed, while you're negotiating the actual lease language, the verbiage, over, 3 to 5 weeks, we can use that to get an entire preliminary design done. So by the time we sign the lease, we're almost ready to submit that to the city. We're way ahead of the game.
Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. Okay. All right, Brian. So you've been giving us a lot of pearls and gold. This has been awesome. Super polished. Thanks for all this, insight. I think our audience is a lot better for it now that they know kind of what to avoid, right? What to focus on, to make sure they're hiring, you or someone on your team, someone who's experienced in healthcare, to be able to show them around and kind of time, how they're bringing their team to these locations. I think all of that is incredible. Yes. But I'm going to cool you down a little bit. I'm going to cool you down, right? Because now we're transitioning to to pleading the fifth segment, which basically means I'm going to ask you a question that's going to push you to the edge, and you can either answer the question or plead the fifth, and no one has done that. So yeah, you better wipe some of that pressure off.
Please cool me down, because literally my air conditioner is out right now. I'm having construction on they're redoing my attic, and they taped over all the vents. I should flip this around and show you. I'm like, hey, you guys didn't take the tapes off the vents, and they're like, oh, you can't use your air conditioner for a week. Like,
yeah,
I guess I didn't
that's amazing.
Talk about reading the standard contract. I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. All right. So here's the question. You ready?
Yes.
All right. What's the most unrealistic wish you've ever seen a doctor bring to a property search, and what happened with that?
Oh gosh. Oh, they're all over the place, man. I want exclusivity in a 50,000 square foot medical building in my 1,500 square foot space, or I'm walking away. I'm like, hey, I'll buy you the bus ticket, man. See you later. Or I want the landlord to pay for the entire build out at $24 a square foot base rent. People are so naive they just think that landlords are all billionaires and they have all this money, and if they can just get to the secret workings. I would say every deal, probably half of my clients are like, I want something completely unreasonable. And I just have to tell them, it's for me to be the bearer of bad news. I'm like, okay, I'll see you later. And you're going to keep running into this over and over and over again. So I don't know. I want exclusivity for my 1,500 square foot space in a 100,000 square foot medical building, or I'm walking away.
What was one that they asked for and they actually got?
Oh, jeez. Oh, what did they ask for and they got? I think it was probably what I asked for, honestly. That one that was $200 a square foot in TIs. We just threw an obnoxious number out there to see, because sometimes you have to see where the market is. You have to check and see what will landlords do. So we threw that out there, and they went for it. And I was blown away.
That's crazy. I've never heard of anything like that before. $200 a square foot is nuts. I mean, that rent must have been through the roof to pay for that. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you, Brian. It's been a fantastic conversation. If you are a doctor listening, if you're an associate and you're listening and you're, trying to decide between doing a startup or doing an acquisition, I think, I want you to be open-minded. I hope today was helpful in opening up your eyes to what it takes to do a startup. You need to start, with a professional like Brian to help you navigate those things. I have always said, and this goes contrary to what probably everybody in the industry says, but I truly believe it, that starting a practice from scratch, doing a startup is less risky than buying someone's practice, right? You are going to build the office of your dreams, and there's, where all the bodies are buried, right? Where you don't know when you're buying a practice. And you can, through sheer hard work and effort and having good advisors like Brian negotiating the lease rate, having a good lender partner with good interest rates and a good product, having a lawyer like us that can help you negotiate the lease, having a good CPA, to help you set up your finances, doing all those right things. And then adding marketing to it, adding a good design that's not going to break the bank. all of these things coming together allows you to succeed. And so people love cash flow, they love acquisitions, but in my deep down in my heart, I know that startups are just are so successful.
The franchise model is there. That's what we're not making this up for every client. It's not an individual thing. There's different nuances and strategies for each, but the basics of success are there, and we do it every single time.
Well, everyone, Brian's information is below in the description below, so feel free to reach out to him, and he'll get you connected with his team across the country or partners that he has relationships with that he trusts, and you'll find him there. And Brian, do you want to give them your website at Rome so that they can check you out there too?
Absolutely. So our website is Rome, ROAM, RomeCommercialRealty.com. Not reality, but realty. Leave the I out. RomeCommercialRealty.com. You can message me directly at info@RomeCommercialRealty.com. We work across the country. We are a free resource and an advocate, and I mean that sincerely. If you're just thinking about doing something, if you found yourself in a bad way, if you've already signed a lease and you're not really sure what to do, literally, you can always call me. Not to be a bragger. We are not hurting for more business. We're very fortunate in this world. We do our business by referrals. We want you to be successful. If you already have an agent and you're not sure, but you just need to ask some questions, we're the team to call. We're here to help you no matter what.
All right, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor and like, comment, or subscribe to Ali Off the Record for more real talk with industry's experts. Until next time, I'm Ali Oromchian, and thanks for listening, and we'll see you around. Take care.